Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to this webinar, and welcome. The impact of COVID-19 on solar projects in Hungary. I am Nicola Kopitzanin, and joining me today are Csaba Polgár from Pontus, Andrea Feitinger from Venezuela, and Peter Pustai from B Energy, and also my colleague Marco from our content team curating the webinar. Well, it's a tricky time for everybody, but nevertheless, we will always try to bring the latest and the freshest content. As you may imagine, COVID-19 has impacts on solar projects on the development side, on the legal side, and the financial side. So we're gonna cover them today and see what are the impacts, how is policy shaping, and what can businesses and people involved in solar projects in Hungary do nowadays. Let's get started then. The agenda, we're going to have the presentation, as I mentioned, from Csaba, followed by Andreas and Peter. At the end, as always, Q&A session. We will explain right away. So whatever questions you have, please feel free to send them during the webinar. Quick mention about Solarplaza for those who are joining our webinar for the first time. As you know, our mission is to positively impact the world by accelerating the sustainable energy transition. We are based in the Netherlands, and we focus on events in the solar industry. Last year, we came for the first time in Hungary. This year, we'll be coming back in November, but I'll tell you more about it in the end. And big network of professionals, so let's be in touch. So regarding some practical details, if you have comments, something is not working, please use the chat box. We'll make sure to help you live. Questions come during the presentation. Please feel free. I'll make sure to answer all of that, to ask all of them, if possible, to our speakers. So feel free to send them over. We will have that at the end, and since everybody asks, we will make available these slides in the end for you in the handout section, and also the recordings will be sent to you. So you will receive that also via email, so all the material will be made available at the end of this webinar. I would start then by introducing speakers of today. Csaba Polgár, great to have you, Csaba. He leads the energy infrastructure and project finance and arbitration groups in the Pontus law firm. Has been advising renewables since 1999, so more than 20 years now. As you can see, he has substantial experience in project development when it comes to solar financing and M&A. Andreas Feitinger, good to have Andreas. Over 15 years of experience in business development and finance in the renewable energy sector. He now leads the business for Venezuela in Hungary, and also leads his own consulting company, Voltaigo. And finally, Peter Pustai, he founded B Energy. He actually will partner in 2015. As I spoke to Peter, he mentioned he covers the whole value chain of solar, so not only project development, but also O&M and construction, and with, I would say, with a significant track record in the Hungarian market over the last 3 years. I would leave the floor to you, Csaba, starting this presentation. So we are curious to hear, first of all, about the legal impacts and consequences on solar projects in Hungary. Let's begin, and I also forgot to mention at the beginning, I hope you are all safe, those who are joining us. Tricky times, but I'm confident we will overcome them together. Let's begin. Csaba, stage is yours.
Thank you, Nicola, and thank you for Solarplaza organizing this webinar, and welcome everyone joining us today. We do hope that we can provide you with some interesting insight into what is happening on the Hungarian solar market, and I also hope that everybody is keeping safe, and then we can actually get back to our normal life as soon as possible. Thank you, Nicola, again for the brief introduction. I think for those who do not know us, we have 8 offices in Central Eastern Europe, basically dealing with the project and transaction legal assistance issues here. And in the past couple of years, we have been very active in solar, in actually all aspects in the total value chain in the solar industry. So we have some hands-on experiences on actually what is going on. So on the actual issues here, I thought that before jumping on some specific legal aspects, I would give you a brief snapshot of the market. So what was the situation when the virus hit the market? So actually the Hungarian solar market is segmented into five segments, I would say, as we have listed here on what you can see on your screen. So probably the most dominant segment is the so-called CAD projects, which probably all of you know. So far, according to the latest publication by the Energy Office, around 1.1 gigawatt is already installed and operating. And on top of that, we have like more than 400 megawatts of household small solar projects installed. These are smaller than 50 kilowatts. The next segment is the so-called Metar-CAD projects, which are, as it was published, around 300 of those small half megawatt project rights have been allocated to market participants. The third one is a relatively small segment. These are the so-called green premium projects. These are largely 1 megawatt projects. 73 licenses have been issued of those. And then pretty recently, the results of the first so-called Metar tender have been published, and around 140 megawatt licenses were awarded. And these are now official, and the Energy Office is preparing for this year's tender to our knowledge. And the fifth segment, what we have not listed here, is the corporate PPA segment, where we are actually receiving at my firm, like on a weekly basis, approaches from various participants trying to prepare themselves for the next phase of the market, which is happening in other parts of Europe, and we do believe that that is going to be the next development once these ongoing feed-in tariff for green premium-based projects are installed and commissioned. Now there are, independently from the virus, there have been some issues which were keeping the market in excitement in the past couple of months, and then some of these we have listed here. The first is already live. That's the balancing cost issue. So probably some people would know that, but the Hungarian prices for balancing costs to be allocated by the TSO Mavir is pretty high. We are hearing prices are around 12-14 euros per megawatt hour to hedge you out against the balancing costs, and the government has now pretty recently on 1st of April introduced this total balancing costs on the CAD segment as well, with a 5-year compensation scheme which is already underway. At the end of the compensation scheme, there will be no further relief against that cost, which will hit the market pretty heavily. A pretty recent development also is that the Mavir is now doing like a social consultation or market consultation on their new plans on how to reformulate the total CAD segment by basically trying to push the classic feed-in tariff system into this green premium-based system, when they would separate the electricity price from the subsidy. And we will see what is happening there, but that's pretty interesting. The third one, which I will talk about in a little bit more detail, is the commercial operation dates, which are fast approaching for all solar licenses issued, and even together with the 3-year extensions what the CAD producers have received, these COD deadlines are approaching pretty fast, and that's obviously one of the to be watched issues, because as Peter and Andreas we talk about that later, this is the one which the virus has impacted or would impact pretty heavily. So just jumping to the next slide, the CODs. So the baseline here is that under the current licenses and regulation, there is a specific commercial operation deadline until which the projects must go, must have the energization process, which means that after a successful test run, you have to actually dispatch electricity to the net, to the grid. And if you don't meet that, that's an objective deadline, then you basically will lose your license. And these CODs are non-extendable as it stands under the current legislation. And obviously the question is that if your project is impacted by delays in your supply chain or delays in energizations, which I think probably Peter will talk a little bit more in detail later, then you can find yourself in a situation that you might that you lose your license, and then basically the project is gone. And then the question is what you can do. And the Hungarian government has published really an array of laws dealing with various aspects of COVID-19, but none of those directly dealing with these licenses at all. And the question is basically falling back to general Hungarian law issues, whether this license is an administrative law action, or from the date when the license is published, this is becoming a private law related entitlement that you can probably cite force majeure issues against that. There is no judicial practice existing on that one. What we know is that certain licensees have already submitted these sort of equitable applications to both the Energy Office and the Ministry responsible for these matters. We are not aware of any official responses to that. They're checking, the official does it every day, whether they publish something, but they have not done so yet. So what the market rumor says is that what we can expect is that for all those CODs which are expiring this year, there will be an extension until the end of this year. And then that raises a number of questions. What happens if a COD is, I don't know, next January? Is it extended in an equivalent amount of time or not? So we will see when that happens. But that's obviously something which keeps the market in excitement. Yeah, jumping to the next slide, and I think Peter will talk about it in a little bit more detail, but what we see is that basically the virus may have an impact in the total solar value chain. So from land acquisition up until the very end of the secondary sale of SPVs, once you're commissioned, it can have impacts on the length of the negotiations. It can have an impact on access to manpower, and I think probably Andreas we talk about a little bit more on the financing related issues, and Peter will talk about a little bit more on EPC and other issues later on. And I see what Hungarian law does and how it can be qualified under Hungarian law. What is very important is that the virus itself and the already published state of danger, which in Hungary is not from constitutional perspective, doesn't give you an automatic relief from your contractual obligations. So the actual contractual clauses, which are included in your project contracts, will govern what you have to do. You would have to send force majeure notices if you believe that you are actually in a force majeure situation. What we recommend to clients is that even if they are not in that particular situation now, it would be advisable to send a preliminary notice that the virus might impact certain performance deadlines or certain supply chain issues, and that's something which you for that you have to go through your contract and see what it says about it. If it doesn't say anything, then and you are under Hungarian law, then you fall back to civil code issues, and then you have various possibilities there, which you could probably explore if you can prove that the virus situation actually had a delaying or frustrating impact on your performance, and that might not be an easy call. So you have to be able to prove that the situation was unforeseen. It was really something which caused you difficulties in performing the obligations, and that you've done actually everything what was within your control to actually tackle that particular situation. So it can be a tricky one, and I'm interested to hear that what Peter will say on the EPC side, whether they have experienced issues like that. Finally, some overview of what the Hungarian government did to tackle the issue. First of all, and probably a number of people hearing us now will know that pretty early March, a loan repayment moratorium was introduced by the government, also not only for residential loans, but also and private loans, but also for commercial ones. To my knowledge, actually, I don't know any solar project which is under financing that would have called a moratorium. Luckily, cash flows under of solar projects will not be impacted by once you're commissioned, will not be impacted by the virus. So probably, even if the banks are asking borrowers, probably the response will be, no, thanks, we do not want to utilize or the moratorium itself, because it would obviously lengthen the duration of the loan, and then there will be more interest to be paid at the end of the day. Apart from the moratorium, the Hungarian government has introduced some new loan schemes, largely targeted to help the small and medium-sized enterprises. But I think a fair majority of the Hungarian solar projects would fall into that category, and I think it is also a very helpful tool for the Hungarian commercial banks to be able to rely on this financing scheme by the National Bank of Hungary. The earlier existing so-called NHP schemes have been further enhanced. The term, the maturity of the loans available were raised to 20 years. The available resources have been raised to 20 billion per project. Interest rate remained fixed at 2.5%, and I think what is a very important addition to the earlier existing schemes is that you can also use this loan scheme for acquisition of solar SPVs, and I think a number of market participants will try to utilize that option. And I think finally, and probably Andreas will talk about that a little bit more in detail, his hands-on experiences of how actual financing banks are approaching this issue. But obviously the virus situation itself will be and can be qualified as a material adverse change if indeed it has certain impact on the development phase or the construction phase of the projects. A number of solar projects we have advised on are using LMA standard documentation, Loan Market Association standard documentation, which has very polished and detailed material adverse change or even provisions, and it remains to be seen whether there will be projects which will need to be redesigned or a little bit amended to tackle the situations. Banks have an array of tools to request modifications, including putting in further capital, more aggressive cash sweeps, etc. So we will see, but I think, as I said, these cash flows seems to be pretty robust to tackle this situation, and we are largely acting on the borrower side, and so far we have not seen a need to amend these provisions. Actually, this was pretty much what I wanted to cover. I'm happy to receive any questions, and at the end of the webinar, hopefully we can have a discussion on those. Sandras, the control is over to you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Csaba, for your presentation, and also thank you, Nicola, for the introduction. I'm happy to give you now some insights from a developer's point of view, and allow me to lose a couple of words about Rana Solar Power. Rana Solar Power was founded in 2005 and was stock listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 2008. And we are focusing on development, the construction, and the financing of PV projects, always with a slim but very strong local team. We are dominant in some geographies, mainly in the US and in Europe, and the strong markets in Europe are Poland, but also definitely Hungary. But we are also active in other markets in Europe, such as Spain and France, and already did projects in the UK and in Turkey. Briefly to the business model, what Rana Solar does is we develop and build the solar power projects, as already said, also provide and look then for the financing, and then we sell the projects usually to investors. Second business model that we pursue is early stage project right development, and then also selling the project rights further on. Sorry, now I jumped one slide. Let me still give you a brief overview on Rana Solar on an international level. Rana Solar Power has projects successfully completed in the range of 750 megawatt so far. 240 megawatt are currently in operation by Rana Solar Power, and roughly 500 megawatt were successfully sold. Regarding Rana Solar Power in Hungary, and here I would like to give you basically a little wrap up what we did. We started in late 2017, early 2018, and developed now a team quite early in 2018, which is also a very critical success factor. And I'm very proud of our team and what we achieved so far. So let me give you a brief update. We have within our team Martin Nemeth running the accounting. Short Kosh just started as a head of controlling. Ömer is basically our head of controlling all over Europe, but also helping a lot for the Hungarian team. Laszlo Bojtos as our site manager, Daniel Selmici as a technical manager, and also Tamás Weinbar as a financial assistant. Rana Solar Power could develop 69 projects of, as Csaba already mentioned, the 0.5 megawatt cut scheme. This is in total 43 megawatt peak of projects, with now 6 + 1, so almost 7 employees working in Budapest. Already good news, even though we are under COVID-19, I managed to travel yesterday from Vienna to Budapest, so I'm already connected from Budapest. So this is the first good sign maybe of relief towards normality. Please see also, just as an overview, 2 projects that are already constructed. A project in Bicske, basically on the highway between Vienna and Budapest, 5 megawatt peak, as well as the Boldog one, which is on a former military site. Looking into finance-related topics, and here basically I would like to tell you that we are working with 3 banks in Hungary, and we started our talks very early with the banks. I was a little bit, let's put it that way, naive in the beginning, thinking that we could finance the full portfolio with one bank. But of course, also the banks try to split their risks, and in the end, we need now 3 banks to finance our full portfolio of the 69 projects. So far, under COVID-19, we do not see any material adverse effect, fortunately. What we see is that the banks ask somewhat more questions and also need internal reporting, maybe more than what we see before. So we have to give updates to the bank. Banks also ask a little bit more where the material is coming from, the modules, if they are on track, inverters, substructures. But in principle, I think we could manage to build up a very good level of trust with the banks, and we are all commonly working on finding solutions also in these challenging times. Csaba mentioned the availability of new financial tools during this crisis. He said that these are mainly for small and medium enterprises. So for us, as a stock listed company, as of now, these new tools are at the moment not available. Our financing is based on a 100% non-recourse project financing. Also regarding the moratorium, which has been introduced in Hungary for the financing, at the moment, we and also not our partners make use of this moratorium because the projects as such and the business models are robust enough, and once energized, they will generate revenue. So actually there is no need to make use of this moratorium. And our experience is that actually this is also appreciated by the banks in case this is not really used by the project developers. A couple of other topics that I would like to make you aware. The delays that might arise due to the COVID-19 situation might also endanger the loan availability periods. Yeah, we came into situations where we had to extend the loan availability already now for a second time, just because authorities, DSOs, are not as responsive as before, and especially the DSO energization dates are needed to be kept. Otherwise, you can run delays, and once you hit then your availability periods, you rather get in touch with the banks earlier than later in this matter in order to make sure that these are extended. It's just a hint. Also, the increase of the BUBOR will cost higher financing costs. So also here, our advice is to make sure that you hedge rather earlier than later and get in discussion with your banks and partners as soon as possible. Acquisition-related issues. I mentioned that we have 43 megawatts in our megawatt peak in our pipeline, some already divested, and we are also constantly looking for new projects. Due to the very interesting scheme and tariffs, as Csaba mentioned, the prices for the projects and ready-to-build projects were very high, and indeed reached a historical high, I would say, briefly before the COVID crisis started. We see now that also some projects are coming closer to the commercial operation dates, and their owners are getting a little bit more nervous. We see that prices are going a little bit definitely further down as before, but yeah, developers were quite spoiled, I think, with project prices. This is mainly true for the cut and meter licenses. If you're now looking into the new scheme, the meter tender scheme, where basically the supported tariff is based on your bid price, we don't see a huge impact from the COVID so far. Why? Because the experience is not really there yet. We just had one round of meters in meter tenders end of 2019. Now we are expecting the next round, but basically here I would say the prices did not find the right balance as of yet. So we do not see here any huge impact from COVID. However, also here project prices are not on international level yet. So we believe also here that the prices for project rights should go down. Just for your interest, in case you don't know, the bids roughly, I think on average, if I'm not mistaken, was in the range of 21-22 forint per kilowatt hour under the last tender round. Yeah, further on ongoing acquisitions or basically divestments, in case you would like to divest turnkey projects which are already energized, but also for the acquisition of new projects. We see, and also Rana Solar as a national developer, we see that the depreciation of the forint is basically a concern for international investors. Of course, there are some measures, as we know. We have, for example, under the cut regime, we have the feed-in scheme basically linked, is indexed. So basically the half per kilowatt hour is increased with the inflation year by year, -1%. However, this does not fully cover, definitely never fully covers the depreciation that was significant over the last couple of, actually 3 months, in the course of 3 months. And this is not covered under the cut regime. So this is one concern for the investors. Another topic that we also had to face now, increase of the BUBOR. In case you didn't run the hedging yet, so there was also a significant change in the BUBOR. So as mentioned, please talk to your bank according to interest rate hedging at your earliest convenience. This will definitely help to counteract against any bad surprises which might come later. Are buyers and sellers willing to transact amidst pandemic circumstances? And I would have to say definitely yes. Life continues. We as a project developer, Rana Solar Power, definitely lives from buying, selling, transactions on the PV market. And therefore, we have to continue with our work. And we are currently definitely developing and looking for tender projects, cut projects, and trying to move ahead with our business in Hungary. As mentioned, now we have a strong team. We definitely want to continue as a strong partner in this market. We have good contacts to banks, partners, legal partners, technical partners, and definitely have to fight also in the future for this position. And will also overcome these rather challenging times. Yeah, as mentioned, local presence is very important, we believe. This is, I think, a big part of our success story also, that we started early. Local presence, be active, talk to your banks rather earlier than later, and yeah, make sure that you also understand their concerns, and yeah, just try to be a good and loyal partner. And then also times of challenges, we believe, can be overcome if everybody is working in the same direction. Yeah, here are my contact details. Thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, I'm here afterwards, also during the Q&A session. I will then give the word to Peter Pusta.
Okay. Good. So welcome everybody on this webinar. My name is Peter Pustai. I am the managing partner of BNG Green Evolution. We are a Hungarian solar company and started the development of solar PV projects back in 2015. We are probably one of the forerunners of the Hungarian market. To highlight this, the first industrial size of a solar PV project under the CAT regime was our project back in 2016. We did not participate in the 0.5 megawatt world. We always, developed our projects in 1 SPV with the size of, let's say, if it was 10 megawatt, it was a 10 megawatt project, not 20 megawatt. 20 piece of 0.5 megawatt installations. So that was our market approach here. Regarding the numbers, so far we have developed and built approximately 80 megawatt of solar PV parks in Hungary, which are operational. Csaba and also Andreas mentioned the tender in Hungary, the new auction system, where basically the largest project, which was a winning project, was our. It's a 20 megawatt project, which is we heavily developing at the moment. It's under building permitting, so we believe it's going to be fully permitted by end of summer. We are very proud on this, and we also have a 50 megawatt project which is under preparation for the upcoming next tender, which we expect to release in Q3, let's say during the autumn months this year. We are a company, we started as a developer, but in the meantime, basically automatically switched into other segments of the market, like construction and operation and maintenance. As mentioned, we were developing 80 megawatt, and we were also involved in the construction of these 80 megawatt of projects. And currently, we are doing the operation and maintenance of 57 megawatt in Hungary. Hungary is a small market, so we are talking about small capacities, but if you would like to see our market share here, we are approximately developed and built about 10% of the operational solar PVs in Hungary. And if you consider there are over 100 participants on the market, I think the 10% is it's a nice number by market share. I broke down our short presentation into three segments, as we are covering the development, we are covering the construction, and covering the O&M of the solar market here in Hungary. When I was writing my presentation, then I just realized that all of those three segments of the market have an impact by the coronavirus. So let's start with the development segment of projects. So site identification, obviously we can identify sites, as we are signing usually option contracts for the purchase, where the CP to release the purchase price for the land is probably the fully permitted phase of the project. Obviously, we have to negotiate those contracts with the landowners. Currently, we experience that many of the landowners are open for personal meetings, but a good chunk of them is also, rejecting to meet in person. And to negotiate contracts and dealing with such landowners on the phone and via internet is close to impossible. So when I say it's a medium negative impact, then I mean it definitely slows down the new project and site identification for projects. Planning and design, I don't see too much difference. Hungarian certified engineers are in the last 3 years are overloaded. So grid connection design takes about 3 months to get a tangible design by an engineer in hand, and building permitting design documentation takes about 2 months period. I'm talking about the minimum times. It can be longer, and as mentioned, certified engineers are overloaded on the market. That has definitely an impact on the planning and design. Grid connection permitting, I highlighted with red in my presentation. Currently no personal meeting is possible with DSO colleagues. That means very hard to negotiate grid connection technical alternatives. The process of grid connection design approval is extremely slowed down in the last couple of weeks, and at the current circumstances, it could take up to 6 months to get a grid connection design document approved by the DSO, which is a quite long time. Building permitting, environmental, I don't see too much difference. The environmental office is keeping in their deadlines, so I don't see any difference there. This applies also for the building permitting. Building permitting in Hungary, I think, is one of the shortest in whole Europe. I mean, if I submit an application of building permit to the authority has basically 30 days to issue the permit, which is a quite short period of time compared to other European countries. It's a quite simple process, to be honest. However, the process is simple, but the documentation obviously is a complex one. Regarding energy licensing, yes, I made a note for myself that the authority is completely shut down in person, and all of the colleagues are on home office. So definitely slowing down all the processes. Even questions and answers are slow. So this has definitely an impact on project development and management of the development of the projects, as there should be a permanent dialogue with the energy office, which is missing at the moment. Andreas and Csaba has also mentioned regarding equity and project finance. So the FX rate issue is a real issue in Hungary. Many of the investors put themselves on hold, and they are on a waiting position. We saw some projects which won the tender or was winning in the recent tender projects. They were unable to proceed and unable to submit the performance bonds. Luckily, we were able to close a transaction with our investor in the middle of the crisis, but to be honest, it was really hard times for us the last couple of weeks, but at least we are on track at the moment. Banks are rather waiting. We are obviously in a dialogue with the banks for new projects, and our projects are also financed by banks, so we are keeping touch with them. But at the moment, they are much slower in decision making, and even due diligence slowed down. And credit committees and boards are just not so frequent meeting and making decisions as it was usual. So this was some words about the development. Let's check what are the impacts, or at least our experience on the construction side. Supply, the whole global supply chain has been affected by the virus. We experienced back in February and March that some of the panel suppliers stopped the production. That caused, the demand was there, but the production stopped. So it was a competition between the customers for on stock items, on stock panels, which showed, let's say, for a relatively short period of time, an increase in panel prices, which seems to get back to normal now. But even or let's say beyond the lack of production, those items which were on stock, ports were closing, workers stayed at home, and so the logistic was a nightmare for many project developers, including us, to supply our projects with the panels. On the other hand, due to the crisis, as mentioned, many investors stopped the activities or put themselves, at least, or Hungary, on hold due to other issues like the FX rate issue. Many projects were put on hold, and we saw in the transformer market that on-stock items were available with a discount. I can tell you one example. We have one project which had initially for transformers 9 weeks of delivery time, and at the end the transformers were delivered within 2 weeks with a 15% discount. So there are definitely factors which are increasing some prices of some items. The prices of some items, but there are definitely such impact as well, where on stock items, or due to the slowing down of the market, some items are available for a shorter delivery time and for a reason at a price discount. Workforce, in Hungary, there are, we get most of the workers also from Ukraine, then Bulgaria and Romania. So as the borders are closed, those workers are not able to, they are not available. So we should do the constructions with the local workers. That means this has also a price increasing effect, because local workers are usually more expensive than the workers from Romania, Bulgaria, or Ukraine, or from the Balkans. So that's something we experience at the moment. On the other hand, we are involved in 2 projects in the construction, where one EPC contractor is working with the Bulgarian staff. They are not allowed to come. And the other one is working with Romanian staff. Over 300 Romanian employees they have. They are not allowed to come to Hungary. So the project is under time pressure. So we were able to close a construction or a subcontract with this EPC, where we provide, of course, local workforce. So we have some positive effect on that. That's what I wanted to mention. So regarding the grid connection part, as mentioned, site visits are not possible at the moment, together with the DSO colleagues. A project starts usually with a site visit where all the authorities are invited and the DSO is invited. Now the DSO is missing from such site visits, so how should we start the project? So it's an amazing issue for us to somehow at least to manage to start the work of these projects. Yes, I made a note here about the project management and the permit management. So the project management is generally slowed down. We need to reschedule the project plan, and obviously for projects which has a short COD deadline, that needs that needs a permit management. We also submitted for some projects the application for extension of COD. As Csaba has mentioned, there are rumors on the market that this is going to be in place within short, but so far we don't have this extension obtained, but looking forward to it. Regarding commissioning, I also highlighted with red, it's a high negative impact, and again due to the DSO. I don't think that anyone has mentioned, but Hungary has at the moment state of emergency, which does not allow the DSO to switch off grid lines, which are providing electricity for more than 100 customers. So if you ask me, I not even can mention to you even one grid line which is supplying less than 100 customers, so that basically we cannot perform the obligations or we cannot perform the grid connection of the PVs, because we cannot work under voltage. So and this until the state of emergency we have valid here in Hungary, we're basically not allowed to get our facilities grid connected. DSOs, so how do you energize your power plant? You energize your power plant when the DSO is there. So they cannot be there, so how can we energize the power plant? So those are the elements we should take into account when we start the project, that there are many delaying effects, mainly caused by the grid connection part of the facility. Regarding O&M as a third segment of our activities, workforce, I made a note here. Workforce is available. Obviously, we have our own people, but for example, in the last couple of weeks, we had to review our health and safety policy. We also were required to hire an advisor on the health and safety policy, which basically reviewed under the taking into account the circumstances of this pandemic situation. So, but we need to revise our policy here. Scheduled maintenance, as mentioned, switch off the systems are possible. I mean, I can switch off my PV, but I cannot switch off the grid line, and I cannot switch off grid connection points. I can't switch off substations at the moment due to the lack of personnel from the DSO there, and due to the state of emergency situation. So we can do obviously repairs within the power plant, but no repairs we can do where you know, we have to switch off the grid line or the substations. Supply, obviously, if we have to you know, make the repairs and we need some spare parts, we should be prepared in a manner that maybe some of the parts are not available on the market, or can be delivered only with a long delivery time. It's also a personal experience. We have last couple of weeks, our bank reviewed 4 of our operational projects, and they asked to expand the spare part stock, you know, to mitigate the risk of not to have available spare parts on the market on time. Regarding management, you know, management of power plants beyond their physical presence, like, you know, facility management and maintenance and so on, we need to have a so-called administrative management of the power plant, which is the scheduling of the production and also reporting to the relevant authorities. So that works smooth. We have an e-management system in place. We are communicating through this with the authorities, with the TSO, and so that works quite smooth. All in, the main negative impact, what I see on the Hungarian market at the moment, is on the DSO side, which is related mainly to the grid connection and energization of the power plants. And obviously, if you have a project which is under pressure by COD deadline, so you have the danger to losing your license, that's a painful stuff. So to summarize, I would spend or I would focus on those items when developing and constructing the project at the current situation in Hungary. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to have any question you might have.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. Indeed, I think thanks to all of you guys. Very useful insights. Now is indeed the time for the Q&A. Just a reminder, please send your questions throughout the webinar. We already have some, so let me begin with them. Csaba, I believe this is probably most relevant for you. Before you mentioned force majeure in your presentation, from the attendees, we would like to know, actually, if COVID is deemed as a force majeure for projects in Hungary, and if you could maybe expand a bit more on what are the implications, assuming it is deemed or if it is not deemed as force majeure.
Yeah, obviously it would be, thanks for the question. It would be great to hear what element of the project life cycle in that this particular question impacts on. But as I said earlier, if there is a delay, under any of the contractual arrangements for your project, then first of all you would have to check whether there is a force majeure clause in your agreement. If there is a force majeure clause, and then the mechanisms there must be followed. There must be a notice served on your contracting party. You have to set out in detail why you believe that you are frustrated from performance. What are the actual factual circumstances, and what are the financial impacts of those? And then if the other party agrees, then you consult the mechanism under the agreement to postpone, renegotiate the deadline, and if that's possible, then it's a consensus-based rearrangement. If that's not possible, and the other party is not open to that, then the force majeure clause itself might result in early termination of the agreement. And in majority of the cases, that force majeure clause would eventually say that all parties are actually bearing their corresponding losses. Now, if there is no force majeure clause in the agreement itself, then and then you fall back to Hungarian law, then the party who is impacted by force majeure would try to exempt itself, exempt its breach of the contract by citing the particular clauses of the civil code, which says that which provide you an exemption possibility based on various conditions to be met. And one of those conditions are largely basically around unforeseeability, so the impact must have been unforeseeable. The impact must have been outside the sphere of your control, which is obviously true for the pandemic situation, and also the impact itself must be in a magnitude to actually physically or financially frustrating you from performing the particular obligation under your agreement. So these are the steps what you have to go through. Now, the other potential possibility is that, and that's a sort of long, sort of historically known element of Hungarian law, and basically all continental laws, is a phenomenon called clausula rebus sextantibus, which is basically a material adverse change set out in our laws, in our codes, which would entitle the party who is impacted by a material adverse change to actually try to amend the contract in a way that the economic equilibrium between the contracting parties are reinstated. Now, if the other party is not ready to that, then one of the parties can go to court and ask the court to reinstate that economic balance between the parties, given that the party who is citing that particular element is the breach itself is not attributable to that party. So obviously, I mean, and there are much more details to that. It's a pretty complex issue. I think the message in one sentence is that the fact itself that it's a pandemic situation, that Hungary has declared a state of danger or a state of emergency, doesn't automatically relieve any of the parties from contractual obligations. It must be carefully analyzed, and then the particular course of action must be decided based on the actual circumstances of that contract.
Indeed. Thanks, Csaba. Peter, I have also a question for you now. Before you briefly mentioned permitting, and one of our attendees would like to know why do you actually say that permitting is not affected or slightly affected, whereas processes related to DSO and TSO are slowed down?
Yeah, I particularly I meant particularly the permitting. I mean of environmental permit, grid connection grid connection, building and grid line permit. Okay, which is a building permit basically, or establishment permit of grid line. and the building permit for the PV itself. So regarding these three, I mean the environmental permit, building permit for grid line, and building permit for PV, I don't see a major problem at the moment. We don't, I mean, all of these authorities are keeping in their deadline, which is usually 30 days. On the other hand, there is one other permit which is related to the grid connection. So grid connection permitting, there I can see a major impact due to the issue that you cannot meet the personnel of the DSO. Obviously, you submit your documentation, which has a technical content, and those technical contents usually we negotiate with the DSO, and we fit the technical content to their requirements, and we are able also to optimize through these discussions. And due to this issue that we cannot meet, definitely to discuss a 30-40 pager design plan document on the phone, it's quite difficult. So without a personal meeting. So all in, I don't see major impact on environmental and building permitting issues, and I see a major impact on the grid connection permitting side.
Thanks, Peter. I would say let's have time for one last question. Andreas, perhaps you can take it since we have one for all. So one of our attendees is stepping a bit aside from the COVID-19 issue, and he's mentioning the EU-19 clean energy package. Perhaps more a geopolitical question, I would say. So Andreas, the question would be, how do you see the midterm market for metal tenders in terms of the EU-19 clean energy package? And do you think that the Hungarian government will integrate the clean energy package directives in the short run?
Well, thank you for the question. To give you an update on where we are with regards to the possibilities and the market opportunities. Yeah, we believe so. The last tender round was in the range of 200 megawatt. We believe that the capacity and the opportunities in Hungary will be in the range of 500 megawatt under a tender tariff per year. This is what I believe. The first thoughts were maybe there are 2 tenders per year coming out. At least for this year, I think there's only one tender. Peter also mentioned, I believe, that in Q3 this will be issued. Regarding the UN regulation, to be very honest, this is not 100% my expertise. I believe that we have a good 3 to 5 years ahead under the tender regime, and then we believe, as we've seen already in other markets, that the PV market will then also be saturated at some stage, and that new tenders will slowly maybe also run out. So we believe the next 3-5 years should be secured. We are here to build up our capacities, and then we will see how this continues. In principle, all over Europe, and I think we are all on the same page. We see the renewable energy sector growing rapidly. We also see commitments that in spite of the coronavirus, renewable energies is on the agenda. I mean, this could then fill maybe a completely new seminar, but basically respect of the environment and protecting our environment, which renewables are doing in a wider sense, could also keep us or prevent us from the next crisis. So we believe that on a mid and long run, in the mid and long run, actually, this epidemic could even be a push for renewable energies, especially PV. Why PV? Because it's also the quickest form of renewable energies to be installed. So any country that would like to meet short-term renewable energy goals is good and well advised to implement PV projects.
Perfect. It's always good to end up with at least an optimistic note in the scenarios we make address. Of course, if you also want to reach out to the gentleman, feel free to reach out at their email addresses in the footer. So I would wrap it up here. Indeed, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Csaba, Andreas, Peter. One last reminder for the attendees: we will send the recordings and the slides will be made available in the handout section. So don't panic, you will receive them. One last mention, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. We came to Hungary last year with our Solarplaza conference. We will be returning this year with our organizing partner Photon Energy. So you can meet us on the 26th of November 2020 Budapest at the Corinthian Hotel. Where you can also meet Csaba, Andreas, Peter at the event. So we will be looking forward to seeing you then. More details going to come up soon. And on the website of the Solar Future Hungary, you can also access the webinar recordings and other content material presented by the editorial team, especially by my colleague Marco Dorota. So I would like to thank you all, gentlemen, for being here, for your expertise. Thank you to all the attendees, and absolutely stay safe in this period. And I hope we can slowly start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So thanks all for joining.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you, guys, and then keep safe.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.